we'll get going. So I'm the founder of Women in the Law UK. We're delighted to have Susan. Susan, over to you.
Yeah. Who wants to make sure that they engage with other people virtually? Who want to make sure that they make an impact in meetings like this and conference calls, all of things that are changing rapidly within the last couple of weeks? Well, I've got 5 things to do with the Superstar Communicator, which is my methodology, that I will share with you today. I have used my voice and communication all of my adult life. Originally, I wanted to be an explorer, as one does, and to see the world by traveling to different countries by teaching. And I taught in Kenya, that's a photo of me there, and in India. But unfortunately, I was involved in a very serious car crash with life-changing injuries. So I had to come back to the UK. But for my sins, after that, I retrained as an opera singer. I had, just random moment to do that, having never been a soloist at school. But I sang throughout UK as a soloist and in Europe, and feel very privileged for that. But it's not the type of profession that you can combine with when you have a young family. So I retired after I had my son. And when he went to school, I kept meeting what I would call normal people as opposed to people from Planet Opera. They're a different breed. And people were saying to me, how is it that you can project your voice? How do you have charisma when you walk into a room? And I realized that I had a bit of a business there. And originally I trained teachers and lecturers and trainers on how to use the voice, but recognized that there were other areas. And I decided to train all about public speaking and communication. And these are some of the things that I do. I also have a music company called Viva Live Music, pretty quiet at the moment. We organize live music for events in Europe and the United Kingdom. I'm CPD accredited for my webinars and for speaking and some of my online courses. And this year I was nominated and recognised, apparently, as an inspirational female entrepreneur in UK. So that was a lovely thing to do. But getting back to the Superstar Communicator, I have identified 5 areas that I believe make a massive difference when you're communicating with others. And through using some of these skills, it can empower you and enable you to really make an impact when you are communicating with others. Their audience, content, preparation, performance, and voice. And what we'll do is that I will touch on all 5. I'm very happy to independently have a chat with you or answer questions at the end about this, about the different areas. Now, the first one is audience. When I was at university, yeah, I know, getting the standing ovation, that's what we all want, isn't it? When I was at university, I rode for my university. I was in the first 4 and the 8. And like all of the university societies, you have an annual dinner. We had ours, and the guest speaker was the captain of the men's team. And after dinner, he stood up, and the first thing he said was incredibly vulgar, incredibly sexist, and incredibly insulting. Now, the captain of the 4 turned round to us and said, "Come on, girls, get in." And we grabbed him, ran 200 meters and threw him into the river. He learned the hard way. Yeah, I know. It's completely true. He learned the hard way that he didn't know his audience. That comment would have been perfectly acceptable for the rugby club, men's one, or the men's rowing, but not 12 intelligent, aggressive, slightly tiddly women that were very strong. And you really need to think about your audience and how you're going to engage with them So I came up with a very simple audience grid. It's very easy for us to think, I've got to say this, but it might not be what's going to land as well with your audience. So there are 4 things here. Can you see them all? And only one of them is about you. The other 3 are about your audience. So the first one is, what do you want to get out of the conversation? So in this context here, doing this webinar, what I want to get out of the conversation is to share some good tips with you. What do I want you, the audience, to get out of the conversation? I want you to go away with some aha moments and, do you know what, I might try that. So what's in it for the audience professionally? Well, it might be that you are going to be doing more conference calls, virtual meetings, and you need to feel more confident about that. What's in it for the audience personally? It might be that you personally want to feel more confident with virtual calls or virtual conferences. So I just want you to have a look at this for a moment, and I'd be happy to put this in the app at the end, or to send this as an independent. Yeah, great. Okay. So do you all get that? Do you want to spend 30 seconds just thinking that through while I do this? Oh, I get this. Just think it through. Think of a conversation that you might do. Okay, it's a bit fun. So there, can you see how you could be potentially changing what you're saying to people? Because it's no longer about you and no longer about your message. Now, you're lawyers, you are all fantastic at communication, but this is quite subtle, isn't it? So, oops. So I always think when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I have a checklist of things, thinking about them. What's their gender, their age group, their profession? What do I consider they might be wanting to get out of the conversation? And as preparation, I will always go through those things, and it might change the way that the structure of the conversation, but it might also change how you approach a conversation. But also listening. Now, normally, if I were doing this as a masterclass, there are all of these exercises that I do about listening. How you are intelligent, sassy ladies who are already listening a lot to your clients. But when you are speaking virtually, we need to make sure that not only are you listening to other people, but you are enabling them to listen to you, because a virtual conversation is quite different. Distractions are a major thing, aren't they? It can be very easy that you've got your phone in one corner and you've got your partner or you've got your kids in another room, and you can be distracted by these things, with the best will in the world, with the type of working environment that we have at the moment. I'm in a situation, I'm in the 3-story house. My husband is man-spreading on the ground floor. My son is in the middle floor man-spreading, and I'm cooped up right at the top of the house. But that means to say that I'm less likely to be distracted. But it might be worthwhile thinking what could distract you when you have that important meeting, and how you can manage that accordingly. Because if you're only half listening, other people will pick up on that. And another thing that I think about is when the other person is going to be ready to speak to you. Now, I really enjoyed Poldark, well, obviously the actor, but I really enjoyed the TV show. And my husband knew that that was not the right time to discuss something really important, because I was not ready to listen. Yeah, would other people agree on this? I can see quite a few smiles and recognition on that one. Likewise, if my husband is watching some football, I know that that's not the right time to talk to him. Now, the reason why I go pronto pronto here is because when you phone up people in Italy, when they pick up the phone, the first thing they go is pronto pronto. And I believe that that's a sign, right, I'm ready to listen. So how can you make sure that you are showing other people that you are ready to listen, but also what sort of signs could you think of that other people might not be ready to listen? And virtually, this is really important, because otherwise you're going to have people that are dipping in and out of conversations rather than being really engaged. So are there any questions from that? I'm whizzing through this content. Is it all right? Shall I move on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So content is the next one. It can be very easy to waffle on and not be concise. And we know that in this virtual world, we have only a limited amount of time to focus on what we're doing and focus on content coming to us. One of the things that can stop people from really engaging with you when you're speaking and communicating is that you're using the wrong language. I know that I'm not a lawyer, but I know that there are some law terms that I, as an outsider, would not be able to understand, and I would feel disengaged from that. And I also understand that there are occasions where you want to use the legal jargon because that's a way of demonstrating your expertise and perhaps shielding some of your knowledge from other people. Am I being cynical here? Yeah, yes, I am being cynical, sorry.
No, it's true. We're experts in our field, and there are occasions where we need to actually use that expertise. You know, there's a plain language campaign.
Yes.
But actually, you know, I deal with all sorts of cases, from vulnerable witnesses to
Yes.
experienced fraudsters to data protection breachers who are companies. And it's important to be able to explain in plain language, but there is a need sometimes. We do use it as a jargon, particularly with, you know-it-all type witnesses, to put them in your spot on. It's not, I think you're right. It's a right observation. I think we do it.
Yeah. Oh, good. So it's not me being rude. But there has been a lot of research about the jargon that's used, and there was one with the Fortune 500 companies in the US, and there was a research of the marketing material that was sent out, and those organizations that didn't use jargon had a rise in share price of up to 2.5%. So it's really, yeah, absolutely. It is a massive one. If you are able to use simple language, and yeah, I totally get that there are some strategies you're going to use with vocabulary and language dependent on your client, but it is something worthwhile to consider when working with clients, and particularly with pitching, that if you're able to keep it straightforward, then that's going to make a real difference to the outcome. Also, I've done quite a bit of work with a chap called Joe McCormack, and obviously in the app I will share information on this. Joe McCormack has written 2 books. One is called Brief, and the other one is called Noise. And he has an organization called the Brief Lab. His idea is the fact that we are being bombarded with so much information all the time that the way that you can actually make an impact is by speaking less and speak more concisely. He says, and I'm sure that you will understand this, if you do not know what you're talking about, don't talk. Prepare to be brief. Keep everything as a sort of headline. And then if people need to ask you more questions, they will do. But if you're waffling and going away from the point, people will disengage from you. And I believe this is even more relevant in a virtual world. Also, I believe that whatever you say, if the first sentence you say is really, really clear, and likewise the finish, the call, what I call the call to action, is very clear, that makes it easier for your audience to remember what you've said. So in a context of a webinar, or, you know, the good old days when we actually used to meet each other face to face, I normally use three different things, one of three things. I will use a statistic, I will use a question, or a statement. And one of those three sets the scene. It tells your audience straight away what you're going to be saying. Likewise, at the end, the call to action might be, Sally might say at the end of this, so that our next meeting is on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Look forward to seeing you there. Really clear, rather than, you know, some people sort of finish, oh, well, thank you, and see you, and it's all a bit fluffy. But we've only got a limited amount of time, so having a very clear call to action, whether it is you need to send me that document by 2 p.m. to we're next meeting at this date. So preparation is the next one, and people often think, oh, I've got to prepare, I've got to practice, or I don't really want to. I think of preparation being everything from double checking that your slides are working, that you've got the relevant documentation, you've prepared what you're going to say, who's going to be in the room, that sort of thing. But I want to touch on a couple of things about managing fear, because managing fear is part of preparation. Now, does anybody get nervous before they speak? Yeah, I certainly do. And it's perfectly normal too. It's part of being human. We are social animals, but we are animals. And what sort of, how does the fear manifest itself in different people? Do you get sweaty hands, or your mouth goes dry, or you shake?
Yeah, different things. Some people just speak really fast and voice goes.
Yeah. There's that shallow breathing, and then it gets faster and faster. This is all perfectly normal. This is back to when you know, we've evolved into sophisticated mammals, but this is all fight or flight. So our bodies, with the amygdala, which is in the brain, are forcing our bodies to think we've got to fight or flight. And the audience could be that saber-toothed tiger of the 21st century. That's what it's literally down to. It's bizarre. Now, I could do an entire webinar on managing the fear, and I'd be happy to come along and do that another time if you like. Yeah. I put my hand up and say, yeah, I went on and sang in front of 3,000 people as a soloist, big orchestra and things like that. But I was one of those kids that didn't used to talk in class, and I still get nervous, and I have post-traumatic shock disorder, which is by the way, but I have managed to push my way through it. And there are a number of things that I learned from neuroscience and also performance, and I'd be happy to share some of those with you at another point, because they could be just useful little tips. But I wanted to say that it is absolutely normal to feel these things, and what you need to do is to try and find your safe psychological zone. So if you're prepared and you've got those things around you that you know you can control, that will help you with that. One of the most important things, you would be amazed at the number of people that come to me saying, I'm really scared about public speaking. What are you going to talk about? I don't know yet. And it's absolutely no wonder that those people are nervous. You are all experts at what you do. You're all highly intelligent experts. And so this isn't a problem for you. And if it's a reassurance to you, nobody knows better than you what you're going to say and the content. So that should reassure you, make you feel a little bit more confident. I don't know if anybody has seen a film called Free Solo.
Oh, no, it's on our watch list.
Yeah, I get a good glass of wine. Free Solo is an Oscar-winning documentary about the climber Alex Honnold. Now, Alex Honnold is a free solo climber. In other words, he climbs without ropes. And one of the things that he wanted to do was to climb El Capitan, this photo of this 3,000 feet lump of granite, and it was being filmed. And it's a remarkable film if you want to understand fear, because people believe he doesn't have fear, that his amygdala doesn't work in the same way as others. And in the film, he went and had an MRI scan, of which I've put in the thing about his about the MRI scan. They showed him photographs of really scary images, and his amygdala didn't react at all. And afterwards, the doctor said, well, he needs extreme stimulation to get his fear working. Yeah, climbing a 3,000 foot lump of granite. But what was remarkable was that he said that he actually does feel fear, but the way that he manages his fear is to practice so much that he pushes away the fear. And in the documentary, he practices every single move on that 3,000 foot ascent, obviously with a rope. And he was living and breathing every single move. It was almost like a dance. And he started the ascent and actually stopped because he wasn't totally sure that he would be able to get through one difficult move. Now, obviously, this is extreme. If he had made a mistake, he would have died. And we know that when we speak, we are not going to die. I think that it's quite reasonable to say that. But the extreme that he went to with preparing himself physically and mentally for this is a lesson for us all. And there is one other lesson from this. During the documentary, there was one of his friends that died climbing. And he said, the trouble is that you start to relax, you don't listen to your fear, and that's when you make mistakes. So what can we learn from that? There's a huge amount, really, and I could discuss it all day, but really the pushing away the fear by your preparation, mental and physical, is key to this. So yeah, keep calm. I'm not very good English. Another thing is to physically prepare. Now, again, if I were to do a masterclass on this, I would do a little bit of time on getting yourself physically and mentally prepared. I always do a 5-minute warm-up, which I've already done today, to get rid of those, the tension that you have in your shoulders, and making sure that you're standing or sitting correctly, and doing some breathing, because it can help you to clear your mind and really be focused. So that little voice, that little fear voice isn't taking over your mind. Are there any questions from that? No? Okay. You're all very attentive. Oh, there we are. So the next one is the actual performance. I don't know if you've come across this particular personal communication model before. It's much quoted. Have you not come across it? Okay. It's something that Meribian did in the 1960s. It has been much misquoted by people. With due respect to image consultants, it was when I went to a network group where an image consultant said that communication was 93% what you wear, that I decided that it was probably a good idea to go back to the original research that Meribian did. And basically what he says is that there are 3 forms of communication that we're all doing all the time. And one of them is what we're saying, the tone of our voice, and non-verbal communication, which can include what we wear, our gestures, body language, facial expressions. If we don't have all of those aligned, so they're saying the same thing, you are going to confuse your audience. So for example, if you're saying something that is very impactful and yet you say it with a little squeaky voice, for example, because you're nervous, people are going to be confused by that and they will notice the squeaky voice rather than the actual message that you're saying. Likewise, and I'm sure, Sally, you being in court all the time, even if you don't know this consciously, you know you're picking this up all the time. If you've got somebody who's saying something very impactful, but their body language is very closed, again, that's going to confuse the audience, of which the jury are part of that. So they're going to have question marks attached to it. So being aware of making sure that everything is aligned is a really, really powerful thing to know. I'm sure you know this already, but it's good to have it in this model. Yeah. So another thing, yeah, Amy Cuddy. Who has heard of Amy Cuddy? All of you? Oh, right, okay. Amy Cuddy is a social psychologist, and she quite rightly says that you look at somebody else and you make an assumption about them. You make a decision about how powerful they are, how confident they are, how all sorts of things based on how they look and their body language. But what she did research on was the fact that you can actually change how you feel inside yourself by your body language. She did research with a number of her students and got people to sit in a very low, in a low social status, and she found those are the ones at the bottom. She found that in their saliva they had secreted more cortisol, making them feel more anxious. And those people that adopted high power body language, so some of the top, basically taking up more room and open posture, those people had more endorphins, which made them feel more confident. So basically what she's saying is that you can change how you feel in yourself. You can make yourself feel more confident by having open body language. And likewise, you can make yourself anxious by having a low status body language. I should flag up that this research has been disputed by other people. However, I would say if it works and does make you feel more confident and it's a placebo, use it. And a number of my clients have used it. So you can see with the top level, 1 or 2 of these probably aren't postures that women would naturally use, but the basis of this is that you are using more space, for want of a better word, whereas the ones that are at the bottom And it can be very easy if we're in a conference call with the video switched off, we could find ourselves adopting a low power body language. And why would I think this would matter within a virtual session? Well, it could matter, because if it makes you feel less confident or less impactful, then that's going to impact on the conversation you're having with others. So be aware of making sure that you have open body language, because that is going to affect the way that you converse with other people, but it also impacts on your voice, and we'll touch on that a bit later. Are there any questions from that?
No, the one where the woman's got her hands on the table is a hilarious one.
Oh, you know, Angela Merkel did that with Trump.
Oh, really?
Last year, absolutely. She was really rocking that.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
It's really interesting.
But interesting also, the lower poses, so the second row, a lot of defendants. If you watch police interviews, they're quite interesting postures that they behave in that way. Actually, when they're uncomfortable or whatever else. And Lindsay was a defense solicitor, attending police station interviews a lot, will have seen a lot of these. But in court, now that we have video interviews recorded, a good prosecutor like me would look at the postures, actually, to see what, if anything. If I was defending, I would explain it and say, well, the person in position 2, the chap with his legs crossed, had never probably been arrested before, trying to think what to say, to explain away the negative connotations.
Yeah.
They are quite interesting postures. There's a confident person and a person sit like the lady just before the end. They're inferences you draw. If you haven't got a brilliant case, you might do. But I think when you're defending individuals, it's quite interesting to use them either way. So that bloke in position 1 is a proper defendant. Yeah, he reminds me of domestic violence type defendant.
Yeah.
That's how they be. That's how they behave. Even when you go in conferences with them, they're over the top confident. I'll get off this. Equally with number 2. So yeah, it is quite interesting. Is all I was going to say. These postures in real life, and sometimes how they come across.
Absolutely. And I know that you want, there's somebody that's wanting to say something as well.
I was just going to say what I did notice often, and actually only in men, but quite often you see a pulse going in the cheek. So now they're how confident they might seem. This pulse, they can't stop. It's going. I don't know if anybody else has ever noticed that in anybody, but I've only noticed it in men, and has been particularly during police interviews. But just an aside there.
Yeah.
I know you wanted to say something, the lady at the bottom of my... Yes.
Yeah, one of the things, Susan, is would you suggest maybe adopting one of these positions, the more open, big, high power ones when you're on the phone? Not necessarily they can't see you, but actually it could be good for your own confidence to get on the phone and be big, and because actually they can't see you doing all this, but actually it opens you up. This is sometimes
definitely. I would say 100%. I mean, people, salespeople, they always say to stand when you do phone calls, but we're in a virtual world, and if you can use this knowledge to make yourself feel more confident, but to be able to propel that confidence within a conversation, even if they can't see you, that can only be a really powerful thing to do.
Interestingly, what you can do, I think Kate Thorpe, so our speaker from Tuesday on well-being, you can use these Madonna headphones so that, if you are on calls, you can walk around the house or wherever you are in the office, and so when you stand, they needn't see you, but you can have the power effect. You know, you could take the image off and just have them on a headphone, I guess, and be able to project in that way, I suppose.
Absolutely. Let's use it. Yeah. You'll use this knowledge in another way, because of course this is normally what I would be saying to people in real life, but we're in a virtual world, so it's a powerful bit of knowledge to have. Okay, shall we move on from this?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have got a few images of people, and I'd like, I know he's really rocking the power man. Just a few comments about what people think's going on in each of these. Now, we might be picking up different things because we've all got our own unconscious bias with this, which is an interesting one. But how about the first bloke? How do you think he's coming across?
Angry.
Okay.
I have read the headline though.
Yeah, I
know. He looks quite, he looks cross. He looks a bit full of himself.
It's very like puffed out chest, like he's pushing himself forward a bit, like.
In some ways though, he looks a bit camp at the same time. Do you see? I think it might be his mouth that's gone wrong.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
He's got a bad mouth, yeah.
Isn't it interesting?
As in control, doesn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he's giving a dressing down to some of the behaviour going on within the army. This was last year. But it is interesting how he adopted this high status power pose, which Amy Cuddy had identified.
I also feel like he does also look like he's doing the YMCA.
That would be hilarious, wouldn't it?
But that's
it would have been.
Go on.
No, I think it's interesting because actually without the headline, if I took the headline off, partly I could have thought it was a kind of mock, like a stripper or something who's coming dressed up in an army outfit. Maybe I'm just too imaginative. Or maybe I'm trying to manage my fear. Whereas if I was faced by someone like him, I'd imagine that he was a stripper doing the YMCA to kind of reduce my tension, my feelings. But he does look like he's just done the big, doesn't he? And his he could be singing.
No, you've got all this wrong. It's because you would never adopt that stance.
Right.
So I know you well, and you're powerful in your own right, but you wouldn't ever adopt some of these postures, and women don't. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
If we start, and it's a bit odd, isn't it? You know, we go to concerts. Even Kylie struts around with her hands on her hip, walking around. We just don't naturally do it. So it's quite interesting. I hear what you're saying about the YMCA. That's because we're taking the mick a bit. But that is a power control pose. And you'll see, next time you're in court when this is over, loads of men do this. One hand in the pocket, one in the hip. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. One in the pocket, yeah.
Exactly. They, unless they're lectures, they don't come close to you when they're at, and then you're trying to reach a settlement or something. They don't. Women, we tend to embark into those spaces, get cozy and close, what have you, which might explain quite often why we're often lost. We're in discussions trying to settle something, and it's taken a million times more. Whereas when we create that space now, I'm saying, no, I want 5 mil in a settlement case I did 3 weeks ago. I'm not getting close. I'm not interested in seeing what tie you're wearing. We are then using that space. See what I mean?
I saw someone. I went on the advocacy course for a week, and there was a girl there who was quite tall, and they were finding she was hunching quite a lot, and they were saying everything you're saying is fine, but you don't look right. And it was really interesting. And what they ended up making her do was hold. I can't probably do it. Stand up and then hold her papers like this here, so that she'd lifted her papers up higher, and it did look better. It was really interesting because that came from judges who aren't really trained in this kind of thing, but even they had said, you know, we need to change how you're standing. It was a problem.
It's interesting. Yeah, so we have that.
Amazing.
Yeah, sorry, we're digressing. Yeah, when I teach advocacy, I'm probably quite mean. Only because I know a lot of this stuff anyway, but I can't stand bad advocates, and the distraction means that what you're at, the content then is lost. And one of the girls on it was before Christmas that I taught on our circuit was French. And because they're all a bit cocky nowadays, you know, the little trainee barristers. It's 49 of them. And it starts off with, you know, they're dreadful and you have to beat it out with them after 3 days. Then they're good again. But this particular girl was doing just what Caroline described. And because now we've got laptops, they don't know how to use the laptops and their folders. So you've got to do that as well. And so often I take it away, or I take their notes away. And they're, you know, like literally they're on fear about crying. I'm like, let's just try it. Let's demonstrate. So you teach them what to do, content physically, then they demonstrate it. And they do. When you're hunched, everyone's looking to see, well, are you going to talk? How are you hunched? You know, carrying a laptop like this, it's really terrible. And we don't have enough of it. And it's interesting about the judges because they're the tribunals who are only interested in the content. And yet, they're distracted by all the other.
Absolutely, because it's how you deliver the content.
Well, one of the things, sorry to interrupt, the thing that frustrated me was that when I did work in an office, I used to find, you know, some women, but mainly men, would have really loud conversations and be sitting back in their chair and, you know, doing all those poses that we saw in the Amy Cuddy, the different poses. And I actually hated that because it was so imposing on an open plan office. So when I went on the phone, I was purposely very like hunched in and like having like intimate calls, because actually I didn't like that sort of big obnoxious openness, because it just felt really awkward in a work atmosphere. So then I purposely made it really low and quiet out of, I don't know, courtesy. But I suppose that's...
But that's just you knowing your audience, isn't it? That's you knowing your audience.
Yeah.
Well, no, my surrounds, because they weren't my audience. My audience was still the person on the phone who I needed to sell to, or I needed to pitch to, or I needed to persuade to do something. So maybe I was doing myself a disservice.
Well, I don't think that. You brought a lot of money into that business, so I don't think you were. But
I think that could be effective.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you feel like you're being pushed. If you're doing sales and someone's quite aggressive down the phone, that would put me off.
Well, that's it.
It was quite quiet.
Conversation, rapport. Yeah. Like, I'm your friend, let's gossip about something.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we move on? Because we've got a few more of these, and I'm conscious of time. So the next one, I have been a little bit naughty taking a couple of photographs of panellists, but everything is blocked out. So what is going on in this discussion panel? Who is in charge and what's going on? Any ideas?
Is that Prince William?
No, there aren't any. No, there really aren't any famous people on here.
Sorry. I think someone is the host, probably the man with his leg out at the end. I don't know.
Do you mean the left or the right? I think the guy on the right with it crossed over his other leg is the one in charge in the bomber jacket.
So
he's laying back waiting to be asked questions, I think.
Do you think?
I think that the one on the left is quite eager.
But then
the woman is sort of quietly confident, legs crossed, and either not feeling, the panel or waiting for her turn, but the other two seem a bit more open and confident in their approach. The two men, I suppose. The third man not sure what's going on there.
Okay, so the man on the left, who's shorter than me, he's about 5'5" tall. He's demonstrating what I think is a really, really good way to sit. He's sitting forward. He's making the most of his space and his height because he's not tall. He is facilitating at this particular moment. I would say that the woman is sitting a little bit too far back. She looks slightly disengaged from the conversation. And that's something that we as women need to be aware of, particularly if we're shorter, that to slightly shuffle forward on our chairs so that we're making the most of our space. That's my opinion. But as you can see, you've all got different takes on this. Next one. Who's in charge and anything that you think's going on?
White shirt on the end looks like it looks like everyone's looking at him nearly. So I'm guessing he's speaking and probably in charge.
It's not a great panel. All the women's clothing are a bit too short for my liking.
I mean, yeah. That one.
You know, for a professional, I don't know, maybe it's a casual sort of panel. He's quite open. His stance looks as though he is in control and quite dominating.
He looks like someone I wouldn't like.
I think he just looks like he's worn the wrong shirt. It's about to burst.
It's a bit tight. Yeah, that's it. He looks like he's thrusting himself out, but it's really because his shirt's a bit tight. He's not tucked in. He looks a bit scruffy, which to me is sort of a bit disrespectful and looks like he thinks he's too good to get dressed up for this panel thing, and he's probably too good for this panel anyway, is what he thinks. Because the guy in the middle looks more smartly dressed, but looks more subordinate to the guy in the too tight shirt. Yeah. I imagine his wife said, "What the hell are you wearing today?" And he just went, "Yeah, I'm all right. I'm great. I'm off."
Pick this out of the laundry basket.
Yeah, he could have done with a jacket, to be fair to him. He just looks like he's about to burst. In fact, he might burst. Is that paper or the shirt untucked? Stop laughing.
No, it's untucked. You can see at the back. He looks like he's really gone for it at the buffet in the lunchtime, doesn't he?
Well,
he's just helped himself, barged everyone out of the way. So I'm really judging him, aren't I? No one knows these people.
I hope that's not your husband, the man in the white shirt. We're all...
No, it isn't. Okay, so I'll give you the lowdown on this. Look at that body language, the mirrored one. So it's all pointing towards the bloke. He's the intern. He's the intern. Yeah, this is so funny. The woman at the other end with the double-crossed legs and the black top, she is the MD of the company. And they were sending out all of this stuff. Her name, she's in this amazing panel for this conference for the events world or marketing world, and that's what happened. Interesting, isn't it?
So Susan, how can we have, if we're on that panel and unbeknown to us, you analyze it, how can we correct that position, ignore the intern for a moment who should know his place?
Absolutely.
But certainly the MD, who's probably trying to gel with everyone, what should be going on there, really?
Well, I think first of all, it was really difficult having all of the seats all along. So it's impossible for people to have a conversation without compromising their body language. So even if it was a sort of semicircle, or the facilitator was standing or at one end so that they could see everybody else and also the audience. But this did no favours to anybody.
Yeah.
That would be
actually Sue, who did one of the talks on Sally's Women in the Law Day, said one of the problems women have when they're introducing themselves is they've got their handbag on their shoulder and they're trying to sort of stop it falling off, and they're shaking hands and they've got the handbag and they're doing all this. So that was something that she mentioned as well, and I'm really conscious of that now. And I sort of was at the time, but I don't know why. Now I just think, well, just put your handbag somewhere.
Yeah.
Which is what I do.
Yeah. Well, it's a good point. And also on panels, what tends to happen is that on panels, actually, if I've arrived there late or something, and I am short, and I'm at the end, and they put me at the end, I say, oh, should we just have a stretch out? And I go in the middle. One, yeah, and one, I'm black. Two, often I'm doing panels before I'm going to court, so I'm in a black suit, so you can't see me. And if I'm going to court later, I put a red jacket on so that when we're in a photograph, I'm in the middle. And if I'm hosting the panel, I don't have phones. Handbag is out of the way, so you can really focus the attention. I so you don't end up with this, because I'm a little bit. I feel bad for the MD then, who at the end, who I thought she was the PA.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what a mistake she had made. And I'm sure she was a lovely, lovely person. I don't know her. I'm sure she was lovely, but she just compromised herself.
Yeah.
Okay. You're right about the bright colours, Sally. I've noticed that with you, and there's someone else who does some of your seminars, who I won't name now, but I've noticed that they perhaps do the same thing, to wear something brightly coloured, because then you stand out, don't you?
Yes.
That MD has just completely gone into like a skirt, like you say, the skirt's probably a bit short, but even leaving that aside, she's not very impactful even in the clothing and the body language as well. So it's all combined.
Yeah. I mean, I was told that by a high court judge, who, if you saw the way she dressed, you'd laugh that she was able to give some advice about clothing. But all in good jest, actually. And also, there had been some photographs taken of me on a panel where all you could see was my teeth, because the room was so bad, the lighting was bad. I was memorable because of the content, but when the photographs came, it was just like some small brown blob. I think it was in the House of Lords. But anyway, I think it is good if we're doing something formal, as Susan says, and to help with the confidence. You're wearing something that you're happy for photographs to be taken of you in, and you feel good. It may be that all these people feel good in it, but when the photos come out, you'd just be mortified. I'd be like, oh my God.
And also, you're wanting people to remember you from a conference. And I remember reading that somewhere. It said, wear something similar or something. You know how Lady Hale wears her brooch?
Yes.
So you can do something like that. So people are like, oh, who's that person with the brooch?
Yes.
And then they know, if they can't remember your name, they can remember something about you, so that someone else can say, that's so-and-so. So you have to do something like that. Right, so carry on.
Next one.
Yeah.
I would say, if you're going to be on a panel, when I'm on a panel, I always ask what the seating is going to be like. If there's a woman on one of those high wretched stools, it's a nuisance, but event planners don't often know. So I would go make sure that you have a long skirt or trousers that you always wear, because again, you can really compromise yourself. So, so to speak. Who's in charge here?
Well, this is terrible, because she's even on a different stool, the woman in the middle. The other two have got nice shiny silver stools. She's got some sort of what looks like the bottom half of a child's high chair with the plasticky looking legs.
Yeah.
She's having to keep her knees together, because she's obviously, if she moves her legs ever so slightly apart, you're going to get a right eyeful, depending on the height of the audience who's watching. She looks like, you say, she's trying to take up not very much space. She doesn't
have a microphone. Yeah.
Sorry. And she just looks like she's trying to hide herself between these two men who are forwards to her, so therefore closer. If she'd simply moved her stool about a foot forward, so she was 6 inches ahead of them, she would have made a better, a more impactful, it would have looked as though she was the one in charge. But all of her body language looks like she's trying to hide herself. Possibly climb out of the window behind her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're sitting forward
really
as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they're leaning forward. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And they're able to put their feet on the ground so they can ground themselves. Ground, yes. But also, I would say that one thing about men, there aren't any gentlemen on this course, but if you do have a handheld microphone, just be careful where you put it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mine's in the gutter.
But
Lindsay's got that. Look, Lindsay. Can you see the arrow? No.
Shocking.
But it's a good point, Susan. Honestly, these tips are brilliant. You know, when you think about it. Yeah. Actually, where you put the microphone, the stools, again, I hate stools.
Yeah, I do.
These are really good, you know, ideas. And actually, a lot of law firms, when I speak on panels, they say, you know, this is how the room's going to be set up. Is that okay? And I say yes or no. Or, you know, if I'm the main speaker, fine. And I'll ask for a lectern or all those other things, or lectern or whatever. But if you just rock up and it's okay if you've got long legs, but Christ, it's quite difficult. Anyway, sorry, Susan.
The person that's in charge is actually the woman.
I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah, and she set up the whole event. So I don't know what she was thinking. She's a lovely, lovely lady, but I think she had a massive fail on this moment, and I hope for her sake she learned from it. I haven't shown her this photo, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, do though, because it'll be interesting. Because I wonder if she was thinking, well, I'm just an interviewer, so let the two men be the prominent figures, and let them.
She's trying to shrink, isn't she?
Yeah, but actually,
tiny and terrible colours on her as well.
Oh,
she does
She's
look
just melting into the wall.
Well, we need someone to do a seminar for us, just to say, you know, how to be impactful in clothing. For years, I've wanted to do it. Honestly, and we don't have to take the talk, but it'd be interesting to see, wouldn't it? You know, what in our wardrobes that we can, because none of us are going to have any money in 3 months, obviously. No. But what can we reuse in our wardrobes to be professional in various settings? And, you know, and how to move it. Like, you know, Lindsay wears a lot of scarves and sort of shirts when we were able to be in public. But those colours on her are very pale. I mean, she's very skinny. It's a gorgeous figure. You can wear it.
Yeah. Oh, well. Next one.
Pretty much what I'm doing.
It looks like one of Caroline's daughters.
Which one? Not mine.
I was going to say, it looks like Lily or a teenager. I don't know.
I see. Yeah, teenager. Yeah, definitely not Lily, though. She's not a typical teenager.
Oh, right. Okay. I've not seen it for a while. So what are you looking at in this one, Susan?
Okay. Now, this would be, even if you're in a webinar or a conference call and you've got somebody that's like, this actually one of you.
I'm actually doing it, yeah. It's only because I have to get close to the screen.
Yeah. But, you know, could this be demonstrating that you're disengaged from the conversation? Could it be that you're actually thinking, oh, this could have been an email?
No,
or could it be that if you were more engaged, that you could have moved the conference call on? Excuse me.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I think Caroline does do that stance a lot. That's her. You know, she's
got a big head.
Yeah, no, she's quite studious, so she makes notes while she's doing a lot of these calls. So actually, Caroline, maybe one of the things you need is put a pen down, because there's some studies done about women in meetings. They spend the whole time like this.
Oh God!
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, on the old LinkedIn page, the one with the 9,000 members, I posted a couple of these articles, and it's about women's engagement in meetings, which is why often we're left behind in boardrooms, in the board meetings. We spend the whole time making a note about everything. Just ask someone for minutes, So the engagement is actually when we're there. We all do it because, you know, the way, if you're old school like me, the way we've learned is by making notes in lectures.
Yeah, absolutely. But maybe we could use that. Sorry to talk over you, Sally.
No, do. You're the expert.
But, you know, instead of taking notes or minutes of the talk, thinking about a point that we should include. So if somebody's saying something, say, about this, about being more impactful in meetings, I've got a great idea, this is what I could include. So writing that down, being proactive within the moment rather than recording the moment.
Yeah, interesting. It's
worth a
I
try,
think Caroline looks more engaged now. You look like you've moved your screen as well. So that
I did,
yeah, I think, this is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Next one.
The old classic.
That's brilliant. Oh, wonderful.
See, I have a suspicion that the Tory speaker coach had read a little bit about Amy Cuddy, but not enough to really understand the full amount. So thought that they should all stand with the power pose, but actually the power pose you should do before you speak, otherwise you look like an idiot. Yeah, okay. So I don't need to say any more on that one, but it could be...
I love this. Come on, we can't have anything negative about Blackadder's. One of my favourites.
Exactly. Well, they're using it in a positive way, aren't they? Unlike these guys.
Oh, that's great.
You're right.
Oh dear. So I think we've covered that bit, haven't we? So finally, and I'm very aware that we've gone over time. I do apologise.
It's fine. It's worth
brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, great. Fantastic. So we've all got our own individual voice. And when we're working face to face, it is slightly different because you've got a little bit more time to tune into other people's voices. I believe that we should speak to make it as easy as possible for other people to take in what we've said. So if we mumble, if we speak too fast, if we've got a really, really strong accent, and we all have accents, it's not just people that don't live in Surrey that have accents, everybody does. And we want to make it as easy as... Sorry, what was that?
Oh, sorry, I had a child and I'm not on mute. Sorry.
Oh, okay. We need to make it as easy as possible for people to take in what we say. And when we are speaking virtually, there might be problems with the tech, the sound levels and things like that. So we need to be even more aware of that. Well, I wanted to share one thing with you today. If I'm working face to face, you know, in a masterclass, we would be finding our inner Betty based on Baroness Betty Boothroyd, who is the lady that's next to me. Does everybody know who Betty is? Sometimes I have audiences that don't know who she is, which just ages me. But in the 1990s, she was the first female Speaker of the House, and she was an icon. And all of the members of Parliament, they adored her, and she was great. But I really liked her voice, and I think it was about 2009, I wrote to her at the House of Lords and asked her if I could ask a few questions, and she invited me to the House of Lords for afternoon tea. She chain smoked through the entire tea. But she has naturally a lower pitched voice than mine. Mine's relatively high. And she said that she consciously made a point of slightly lowering her voice when she had to project it to make sure it didn't become shrieky. And this is the thing, everybody's voices, whether they are male or female, the pitch or the note goes higher when we're nervous or when we're trying to project the voice to make it louder. So this is something that finding your inner Betty is crucial when you're wanting to make an impact, even in virtual meetings. And that is to make sure, even if you're getting frustrated, to consciously slightly lower the voice so that then you can say, I don't agree with that. And it will cut through all of the noise. And there's been a lot of research done about pitch of voice. One of them is Stirling University. In 2018, they did a study of pitch of voice during interviews. And they found that people that perceived themselves as less senior, the pitch of their voices went higher. But if they perceived themselves as being more senior, they pitched their voice subconsciously slightly lower. So what could we use in a virtual conversation here? We could be trying to mimic being more senior or more impactful by slightly lowering the pitch of the voice. And that will be picked up by the other person. Interesting, isn't it? And that's just playing around with your voice slightly. Everyone's gone quiet for the first time.
Yeah, because it's an interesting idea, actually, because I think we know historically Margaret Thatcher lowered her voice, didn't she?
Yes, there were a couple of reasons for that.
Yeah, so it's not something I necessarily have ever agreed with, actually, if I'm frank. But it is interesting, the study from Stirling, that
yes,
people did that. And I'm just thinking, actually, about when I'm in the boardroom on the board that I sit on, I often, go in an entire meeting and I ask 2 questions, and then everyone is then silent. And I'm like, I'm waiting for the answer. So it is quite interesting, whereas actually often the people vying for the attention, aren't they, by higher voices and the nerves and screeching.
yes.
So it's quite interesting.
I mean, if I go back to Thatcher, my feeling about that whole thing was that, when you're a PM, you are sort of a member of parliament, you are shrieking, you're trying to get heard. And naturally, when she did that, her voice became very unpleasant to listen to. And think about the rest of the Tory party at the time in the 70s. They were very privileged men, that the only women they probably knew were their mothers, their nannies, their wives, their sisters, their mistresses. And then there was this woman that was shrieking at them, and they were terrified by that. So, yeah, so my feeling is that the voice was lowered, and, when she projected her voice, it was therefore not this shrieky harridan that was before, and it had more impact. But you might disagree with me on that.
No, I think it is interesting, because I think that, especially if you're small or short, or
yes,
we don't have the advantage of the height, which a lot of women, can command the powers by just physically being taller, or at least being 5'7". They can advocate in that way. Where it was when you're small, one often feels, one, you've got to be more of an impact, particularly, in the legal profession.
Definitely.
And you have to find ways of doing that. And, and often in the courtroom, I think a lot, and the robing rooms, men are often patronizing if you're small. They don't do it with me now, but that's taken a good while. That whole, oh, hi, how you doing? I like your pink trainers. And you're like, if you've got absolutely nothing to talk to me about other than the shoes that I'm wearing, having just arrived at court, or that I'm going to change out of. So I think it is interesting, using our voice.
Yeah.
That's probably why we've all gone quiet, because I don't think any of us had really thought about it in that way before.
I believe it could make a massive impact.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think they will all agree that this has been really helpful and useful, especially in this, computer screen world as we are in, and for later on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.